Let's work on a bunch of sterling silver ring orders together. So today we're going to be making 6 rings total. We're going to be making 1 thin stacker band, 3 thick stacker bands, and 2 fidget rings. So we're pretty much going to be making every sterling silver ring that's available in our shop, except for our custom initial ring. But here's all the metal that we're going to be working with today. And I am going to go ahead and cut down each piece to size. I do pre-measure these off camera, just because, fun fact, when you are figuring out what length to cut the metal to for a ring, there is a little bit of math involved, which actually includes using the number pi. But I promise it's not as complicated as it sounds. I literally just use my calculator and it's as simple as that. But I do think it's interesting, especially considering that a lot of us, myself included, never expect to use the number pi outside of school. Anyway, so far I've cut the metal, filed it down, and shaped it into somewhat of a circle, and now we're just going to use a different tool to bend the 2 edges together until they meet up perfectly and there's no gap in between them whatsoever. So I just finished doing that for the stacker bands, and now we're going to do the same thing for the fidget rings. We just need to make sure that we interlock the rings beforehand. After this, we need to prep all the rings for soldering. We are going to start with our stacker bands first, just because the fidget rings do take up quite a bit of space, but I am going to cover each piece in flux. This is just going to help protect the piece from fire scale while also helping our solder flow. Next, I'm going to cut a piece of solder for each ring and then place it by each seam. Now we're just going to grab our torch and heat up each piece until the solder flows perfectly. If you look closely enough, you can see exactly when the solder does flow. I personally think this part is super satisfying, but after this, I'm going to quench the rings, that way they cool off completely, and then I'm going to go in and solder each ring band on the fidget rings. And same thing as last ones, we're just going to quench those and then keep on working. So here's what all the rings look like so far. Now we're just going to grab our ring mandrel and place each ring on there and hammer it out until it's a perfect circle, just like this. At this point, there is still excess solder on all the rings, so we do need to go in and file that off on both the inside and the outside of the rings. I do use a little piece of sandpaper for the outside of them, just because I feel like I have a lot more control with it, and I'm not risking losing the shape of the ring. Next, all the rings are going to go into what is called a pickling solution. This just helps clean up the rings and get off any fire scale. After the pickling solution is probably the longest part of the whole entire process, which is sanding down each ring and getting out any major imperfections. And the reason why it takes so long is because we need to start with this dark green sanding disc and go through every single color that's in that container and work our way all the way up to a 2000 grit. Once that part is finally done, I throw all the rings into the jewelry tumbler. This part's nice because the rings get to tumble for quite some time, and I could get some other work done in the meantime. Once the rings are done tumbling, we're on to the last and final step, which is just going in with 2 different polishing compounds to get out any minor imperfections while really bringing a shine to the rings. Anyways, here's the final product of the 2 fidget rings. Here's a quick example of how the rings fidget. As you can see, it's super smooth and doesn't pinch your skin whatsoever. Here's how the stacker bands turned out, and here's all 6 rings all together.